Yeah, welcome to our webinar. And it's a really special edition of this webinar. As you can see here, it's the beginning of a new year. Really happy to have all of you here. And let's see. So the main topic of this webinar is to kind of look back a little bit on the at the last year, what it brought for the field of AI and machine learning. And we have this monthly edition of these webinars. Really want to take this new year to to go a little bit broader on some trends and not talk about specific papers so much, but really look at some of the larger themes that have come up in the last year, and try to look a little bit into the future, into our crystal ball here. So we saw a lot of things. Here's some news, recent news from backlashes against face recognition, a rise of deep learning for drug discovery and medical treatments. A lot of investment in AI and robots rising. So if we look into our crystal ball, what will it bring? Well, crystal ball is not actually a crystal ball. It relates to my own New Year's resolution. And my New Year's resolution is there has to be more dancing in 2022. You don't really want to see me dance, so imagine, but there will be more parties and more dancing in 2022. So that's my New Year's resolution. What about you, Sergi?
I mean, I can certainly relate to that New Year's resolution. I mean, it's not going to be that hard to top 2021, to be honest. But
the bar is pretty low. That's true. Yeah. So. And what about you, Marzieh?
Yeah, for me, also the same, but also surviving basically another year. So I do hope for like better, brighter future.
Well, you have a bright future coming. So let me pop this bottle to the new year. And from Zeta Alpha, we wish all of you a super healthy 2022, full of love, inspiration, creativity, and great research. Here we go. Boop.
Cheers. I have to say,
so,
cheers.
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 Only filled with, yeah.
To a great new year in AI, and for all of you personally and professionally. Really happy to have you here.
You too.
So let's dive into it.
Yeah, let's go for it.
And yeah, we normally we would have done a proper New Year's party, New Year's reception with drinks and social. We owe you that one. It's a promise.
I keep an
right. So for those of you who haven't heard about Zeta Alpha yet, or haven't used our platform, just a very short detour to promote it a little bit. We're a new platform for discovery and organization of knowledge for AI and data science teams. Try it out. I think you'll like it. It's powered by a lot of cool technology. Very short overview. I won't bore you with the product details, but basically it's a powerful neural search that Marzieh and Rodrigo and others have been working to perfect, which allows you to discover content in AI and data science, find similar related work, visualize things, including ranking by popularity of code and social media mentions, so you can discover trending topics. It's actually what Sergi uses a lot to build these webinars and discover the papers that matter and have an impact. You can organize your work around the topics that you are interested in, personalized folders, and that then become kind of research assistants to you because they filter all the new stuff that's coming out with very relevant, need-to-know content that ends up in your attention rather than just following everything, which is impossible these days, right? With archive and everything. So when we look actually at back at last year, we always try to predict like how many publications there will be. And of course, 2021 has been another record year for AI publications on archive with over 48,000 papers. So that's, let's do the math. That's about 400 papers per day, something like that. So that's a lot. But what you see in this graph, and that's interesting, I'm interested to hear you guys' opinion. Actually, the growth has not been as large as in previous years. In previous years, we saw like 30 to 40% growth year on year. There's growth, but it's been a lot less. I would guess the pandemic effect, or is the AI winter coming? What are your guesses?
Or maybe it's the definition of the paper that changed. I remember it was no, just joking, but like I remember there was this situation in Poland where the crime rates dropped dramatically, you know, at year to year on 1 year, and it turned out that there was a change in definition, that it's not a crime until it, you know, I don't know.
Is there a change in definition or archive? Yeah, well, some of these papers are really thick. So we saw like Rodrigo actually published this book on archive, and it's like 200 pages, right?
See, maybe there are more books. Maybe there are way more books. That's the, you know.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of papers that are really long. So it might be that.
Maybe the page count has gone up 40%, but the number of papers is smaller. Well, so there are a lot of different, so we collect all this data. There are a lot of different ways to slice and dice it, right? By topic and by country and everything. You might have seen on our blog, we did this analysis. This is not for archive, but just for NeurIPS, on kind of the distribution per country. You could do it per company, like, you know, is Google publishing more than Facebook? I think yes. What you see, especially, is kind of the large growth of China, right? I mean, we've seen like a Wudao model with 1.6 trillion parameters, multimodal, kind of foundational model, a lot of other interesting stuff coming out of China, which is actually not so visible here in Europe and in the sort of Western research sphere. Maybe not as visible as some of the stuff that we already know. So it's really interesting that that stuff is growing very significantly last year. So there are many different ways you could slice that data. And we'll maybe talk a little bit more about that. But with that short introduction, I want to give the word to Sergi to introduce our panel for today.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm just sending quickly, the book link from Rodrigo to everyone. All right. So yeah, let's do a quick round of introductions. Rodrigo, would you mind beginning?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, my name is Rodrigo Nogueira. I work for Zeta Alpha, trying to also contribute to their searching platform. And besides that, I also teach at a local university here. I'm talking from Brazil. I teach at a local university here. It's called Unicamp. We teach deep learning courses, information retrieval, NLP courses. And I'm also a postdoctoral researcher in University of Waterloo, mainly focused on deep learning information retrieval. So yeah, these are my main areas of expertise. And like someone mentioned, Jakub mentioned, I would just publish this book last year about pre-trained transformers being applied to information retrieval. It has been quite a revolution. I feel that the book is already half outdated. Yeah, the book is moving very fast. So yeah, had to get.
Would you believe I got the book in the mail today?
Oh, you got it. I
finally got the package today.
I still didn't get it. Can you believe it? Like it's still like stuck in the.
It's the worldwide logistics slump. So UPS took like a month to get it from the UK to my home.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really excited that you could make it. I mean, your expertise in neural information retrieval is great. All right, up to next one. Working in reinforcement learning and robotics and autonomous driving, we have Christopher Diehl, who's doing research in this space, currently doing a PhD in TU Dormund, right?
Yes. Hey, thanks for having me. I'm Christopher, and yeah, I'm doing my PhD at TU Dormund University, the Institute of Control Theory, and mostly in the field of automated driving, also robotics, and there I'm focusing on AI-based motion planning and motion forecasting, especially in automated driving. So how do all the other agents behave, and how can I plan based on these? Yeah.
I believe, am I wrong? That you guys recently got a best paper award for a workshop at NeurIPS for what was the workshop exactly? The name?
The workshop is the machine learning on autonomous driving workshop. Kind of a big workshop, and yeah, we received the best paper award there.
Nice.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah. Then working on the space of machine learning operations, head of growth at Neptune AI, we have Czakon. I'm going to refer to you as Czakon. We just decided that because we have two Jakubs in the call. So want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks a lot. So yeah, I take care of users and customers at Neptune, hoping and trying to make it as big and as happy community as possible. And for those who don't know, we take care of model metadata storage and management. So stuff like experiment tracking, model registry, things like that. We help people do it. And yeah, and it's been growing really nicely last year. Thanks.
Great. Then we have our own in-house research lead, Marzieh Fadaee, got a PhD from the University of Amsterdam, and also specializes in NLP and information retrieval.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Marzieh, and I'm here from an unexpectedly sunny day in Amsterdam. I did my PhD, like Sergi said, at the University of Amsterdam, working on machine translation and NLP deep learning models, how they can contribute to these tasks. And I joined Zeta Alpha almost 2.5 years ago, and especially working on our neural search system and improving that.
Cool, thank you.
And 2021, that was definitely your year with our neural search system beating the classical paradigm, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we have started working on this for 1.5 years, and last year we finally could beat what we were performing with a traditional search system. So if you are on our platform, definitely give it a try and see how it works.
Yeah, I can give faith to that. And then we have Jakub, founder of Zeta Alpha. You already said a few words, but want to say something extra?
Yeah, so AI is really as much as a hobby for me as a calling, and some of the stuff that has been coming out, but I will tell you about that a little bit later, goes all the way back to stuff I was working on in the early 90s. So watch out, dinosaurs coming.
Great, thank you. And now in myself, I'm Sergi. Like I said before, I'm the AI community manager at Zeta Alpha. I try to know what's happening a bit of in the space of machine learning and artificial intelligence, and get a bit of a large perspective on what are interesting trends and stuff that's happening. All right, so that said, I want to dive right in because we have a lot of stuff to discuss. So I wanted to begin by looking back at 2021 and give each panelist the opportunity to sort of highlight one thing that they thought was kind of most defining or that captured their attention, this past year, and give like a couple of minutes of why that is, and give a pitch of why that's the main takeaway from 2021. So Marzieh, would you start with that?
Yeah, sure. And I don't know whether I'm allowed or not, but I want to cheat a little, so more than one, but I will still use my time in this part. So I think for me, I was looking into basically the field of NLP and IR for the past year, as usual, and there were a lot of exciting things going on. But I was thinking about how to categorize them and what were the things that I think were important that contribute also to this year and going forward. And one thing that I find really interesting is that there was this attention to working on going beyond available data set in a lot of tasks. And that was done by not really working on supervised tasks anymore, but rather on self-supervised and unsupervised tasks. So that was something that I've seen grown a lot last year. And even in areas that there were already existing these data sets that were good benchmarks, good, relatively good sizes, but I feel like the community had this feeling that we are getting biased towards these existing data sets and we need to actually focus on what we are trying to learn. And there were a lot of these interesting works on how we can learn from self-supervised ways of creating our own data sets, our own training set, and also learn in an unsupervised manner. So I think that was something that is going to also be continuing going forward. And like a small thing that I think a lot of people also agree is that one thing that last year came into play even more was this blurring of the boundaries of basically research fields and also predefined tasks. So this both include multimodal learning and also interdisciplinary learning. So I think that was something that a lot of people were thinking that that's the power of neural networks and deep learning models that are not really bound to a particular setup. And I think that's something that, especially last year with the work of DeepMind, with like mixing deep learning and biology, or a lot of these multimodal learning that's going on with like text, vision, things like that, and taking actually the benefit of learning the actual task with as much information and as much data that is available. That was also something very interesting to me.
Yeah, so I feel like I definitely resonate with everything that you say. And in my mind, I like this point you make about going beyond the available data sets, because I feel like that narrows really like a lot of the gap between academia and industry, right? Where the data aspect of it is where there's a big disconnect. And like if there's more research work in this field, it feels like these things are gonna come together a bit more. Rodrigo, you work on quite adjacent research. What do you think? What is your takeaway? Do you have any comments on this?
Yeah, I totally agree with Marzieh. Like, it's super exciting to see that people are starting to use less and less all these supervised data sets. Like she mentioned, we are very biased towards what we have annotated in the past by humans, and I think that constrains us a little bit on what are the new tests that we can try. Like, we're always waiting for some new data set release until we can try this new task or technique. But now it seems that this boundary is starting to get thinner and thinner. We can train self-supervisedly and get a pretty good quality models without resorting to intensive human labeling. But in terms of highlighting highlights that I have for 2021, in my area, I think one demo that I was quite impressed to see was from OpenAI, the Codex one. At some part, they were presenting their method, and they were with the Microsoft Word open, and they said remove the first lines of all the empty, the white spaces of this document, and then it wrote the code and run the script and corrected that. Even though it's a small task that it accomplished, I imagine like build upon these tasks, it will gradually bring us to way more complicated things. And yeah, I was impressed to see that how precise the model can be. Like, if you imagine that it's generating one word at a time, one token at a time, and still it got everything correct. I was impressed to see.
Rodrigo, did you see this recent paper that actually used Codex for solving university level math problems?
Yeah,
so it was like really cool. Just Codex and some like prompt tuning they were using to define the math problem and then write a program that solves it and gives the actual correct answer. Super impressive.
Super impressed. And there is also another one that I remember. I think it was from 2020, but they published a newer version 2021. It was from from Berkeley, I think Peter Abiu, Igor Mordat, I forgot exactly the name of the paper, but this latest model from DeepMind Gopher, they were evaluating their model on that data set, and the data set contains tests for all sorts of tests from high school until college, and the model is reaching a level of the high school student. They still cannot outperform the specialist, but it's also like it's still incremental progress from what we had in 2020, I feel, but it's a lot of progress. It's a lot of incremental progress, I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have to say that on like with a lot of commenting this about the Codex from OpenAI with a lot of friends, I feel like everyone's opinion was like being a little bit skeptical of it. But then once they got to try a demo of it, like everyone was really impressed by it. Actually, like, wow, this is actually something quite like it's kind of uncertain how useful it is to actually code, but at least like how fast it is. Especially what you said, like knowing that it's doing auto-regressive, prediction. It was pretty insane, I have to say.
I don't think we have we allow Codex generated code to go in production unreviewed though yet. How's that at Neptune, Jakub?
Maybe you've never done.
No, we're actually running half the platform on Codex. So if anything goes wrong, just
oh really? Yeah,
no, we're just kind of yeah. So yeah, you got our secrets, So if we can cut maybe this part out, that would be great.
Cool. So, Christopher, what do you what do you think? Maybe you have some different perspective from the world of RL or autonomous driving. What excited you about 2021?
Maybe first to pick it up from Marzieh, she mentioned the progress in biology, and I'm not from biology. I'm more from control theory or autonomous driving, but it's very interesting that they solved a scientific challenge which was unsolved for nearly, I guess, 50 years. And this leads to more impact of AI in scientific discovery. And I think this is very interesting. And more from the field of autonomous driving, yes, we have a lot of breakthroughs in the field of prediction, which is also correlated to the protein folding. For example, they are also predicting something, and there are also some interesting correlations to other fields like NLP. For example, the guys from Waymo, from Google self-driving car, now presented a prediction algorithm, so predicting the future of other agents based on the BERT model. So it's always interesting to see these connections. And another interesting thing is the release of a new benchmark at NeurIPS for AI-based motion planning. So this is the last step, I guess, for scalable autonomous driving. So in the past, the planning side of autonomous driving was more rule-based, and we see a lot of progress. We see some production systems now in the US, but I guess to reach this scalable level to drive in nearly every condition, we need some kind of machine learning also in this field.
So I think I'm gonna ask you about this in a second when we talk about 2022. So let's not reveal too much of that. But thank you. I think that's really like interesting, different perspective. Like given that you're working on autonomous driving and reinforcement learning.
And I'm curious, like 21 has also been the year of transformers. How is that in reinforcement learning and in cars? Are transformers making headway there?
Yeah, so from the field of trajectory prediction and also planning, which is using algorithms from imitation learning and so on, they're all shifted to transformers, like from LSTM to transformers. And there is also a shift from CNNs to graph neural networks, I guess. So I guess the current state of the art in these prediction algorithms and autonomous driving is transformers, yes. And also in reinforcement learning, I guess there's a recent paper from Berkeley, where they used reinforcement learning as a sequence-to-sequence prediction. So they reformulated this within Transformer and showed some interesting results.
Rodrigo, do you have a...
Yeah, I have a question, Christopher. For a point of view of an investor, like, would you put your money on Waymo, Tesla? Yeah, like I've seen watching these videos on YouTube. It seems it's quite impressive what they are able to do. But I just wanted to know from you, do you think like current progress, the way it is, in a few years, we're gonna have level 5 self-driving, or what do you think?
That's an interesting question. So from my point of view, I mean, we see a lot of progress in the last years, and I mean, the first 95% or 99% are the easiest one, but in autonomous driving we have a lot of edge cases. So you can imagine that there are like infinite numbers of scenarios in this world, and this is currently where we stuck, I guess. And but we will solve this, because what is also increasing now is the kind of simulation. So when you see the current publications of industry leaders and also academias, there are very realistic simulators, and there we can simulate all the edge cases and then also learn based on these. So I guess this will make some progress. And we also see that in some restricted areas we can now operate robotaxis in the US, and this is also coming in, for example, in Germany. I guess Mobileye announced that they will drive, and okay, there are a lot of announcements, and then self-driving is always like 2 or 5 years away, but I'm optimistic, and it will come. But full level 5, from my point of view, is kind of hard. But level 4 is like driving in restricted areas under restricted conditions without a safety driver is definitely possible, and we see this.
Nice.
I think we're trying to get a poll actually for the audience to vote on whether level 4 autonomy will be commercially available before 2025. So maybe after that you can give your take. Anyway, in sake of keeping time, I want to get the thoughts from Czakon on on 2021. I mean, you have a very different perspective. You know, the whole space of startups in MLOps has been blowing up for some years. What we say is your takeaway from this past year?
Yeah, well, yeah, I'd say exactly this. That 2021 was the year of MLOps in terms of companies waking up to problems that that putting models in production poses, the risk with that. People actually seeing how solving it with homegrown solutions is problematic, and then obviously you have a lot of tools that to come up and solve it, and I'd say that the amount of company startups, frameworks that happened in 2021 was just huge. And there are good and bad things with that. So I think it's it's great that that this sort of means that companies care about it in many ways, I think. And this whole hype around MLOps means that companies care about ML. That's great. The tricky part is that that there are so many tools, and they it's hard to tell which ones do what, and what do they solve, and what do they actually solve, and what they say they solve, and what are the real problems that you need to solve. And that's sort of a tricky part, I guess, going into 2022. But yeah, I'd say 2021 for me, it sort of in many ways meant that that we're actually pushing those models to production. We're actually using this research in real life, solving real problems, and the business folks, the suits, if you will, care about it in many ways, which is good, because it means there will be investments, and then there will be places where all the awesome research papers can be, implemented. So that's something that, that I want to take away from 2021.
So Jakub, from Zeta Alpha, do you agree that business folks care about machine learning?
Oh, definitely, but the level of maturity in large companies is very low. So I've been talking to a lot of business leaders this year, and many are like actually just preparing the sort of the data infrastructure, like data lakes and things like that. So actually, if you look at sort of the average company or the average mid-sized to large company, I think they would love to get machine learning in production, but they're really struggling with that. So I think MLOps, in my view, 21 was the year of MLOps, and 22 will again be the year of MLOps. But I also see like some consolidation there. So I think Neptune's going to be buying a lot of other companies, probably. Who knows?
We'll see. Yeah.
Any other highlights, Jakub, from the?
Yeah, something I wanted to say. When you mentioned Codex and it's solving the sort of solving problems at the level of a teenager or a high school student. When you said that, I was wondering, is it how good Codex is, or is it how bad we are testing our high school students? So perhaps that's sort of like a bigger thing, I guess. Sort of thinking about a lot of the things will be automated in some ways. And you can use those tools like transformers. Like you have a GPT, helping with creating some sort of things that you can do in marketing, for example, right? Or creating those customer service things with avatars of people talking, right? You can do stuff like that. So like the thing here is how to leverage all those things and how to be able to adapt to all those new technologies coming in from ML. And I don't think we should be testing people, sort of like ABCD, what do you do here, right? Yeah. It's not, like the tests should be entirely different. Like in the workplace, I think it's entirely different. So just wanted to mention that because I thought it was, that was, for me, it means quite, that we should change the way we test people and help people grow. Like, well, how do people should grow? What should be the goal, right? Like
talking about high school students, we have a poll going. You can still vote, and one of the answers. So the question is, will any fully autonomous car level 4 be commercially available before 2025?
Yes, there is already. So I guess in restricted areas, so the company is called Cruise from GM, General Motors, and they are now operating self-driving cars in San Francisco as a robotaxi, and Waymo
commercially, like fully commercial, because Waymo has been operating in Phoenix a long time already, right?
Yeah,
not really
kind of
being followed by other cars.
So there is no safety driver in this car. So it's like I don't know. It's like a beta test or something. But right. I think this will continue. But to achieve general level 4, I'm not sure. But level 4, like in restricted areas. So like okay, we map an area. And then go from town to town and enable this in every town. I think this is possible, yeah.
So the majority of our audience thinks no. And one person actually says at the level of drunk teenagers, which was one of the follow options. So
why don't we stay? Let's stay, Christopher, with you on the topic of autonomous driving. So you've mentioned before that machine learning motion planning was one of the things one of the trends you expect to see more in 2022. Like, could you give like a couple of minutes quick explanation of what exactly that means and how it is relevant in the context of like getting this self-driving kind of dream that has been in the kind of pop tech scene for like many years now, and that is still not there, and it seems like it's always a couple of years away, like you said.
Yeah, maybe let me give a short introduction how the system architecture of current self-driving vehicles look like. So we have like a big sensor suite with camera, lidar, and radar sensors, and then these are fused from a perception system to like an representation of the world. And then the next step is to predict the the environment. So how will all the other agents in the future behave? This is kind of a very hard part, but we saw a lot of progress in this field in the last 2 to 3 years, thanks to a lot of new benchmarks coming out from industry leaders, which they release from real-world data logs, and these perception systems are mostly machine learning based. So we see we build here up on the progress of in the field of vision, for example. And also the prediction models are also mostly machine learning based, but the planning side, because of safety requirements, is mostly classical rule based or optimization based, or uses classical rule based or optimization based approaches. But this is not very scalable, because every time we get a new environment, we have to change these systems. So for example, if we encounter new situations, we have to change our cost or reward function in this way. And so the research goal is, how can we leverage the suboptimal driving data from human drivers to learn this. And this would be a much more scalable approach. And this is also
kind of an end-to-end reinforcement learning type of approach, or not really?
more like a mix. I don't mean this approach where we, for example, take a camera image and then we have a big neural network and then we output like a control signal for the car, but it's more like a combination of both approaches. So in the one hand side, we have this modularized approach, which is much more interpretable, and which is also very, very important, because we're in contrast to other fields, we are like in a safety critical environment and we have to ensure safety all the time. But for example, we want to make all these modules differentiable, and then we can train them end to end, like with a multitask loss. And this is more scalable, I guess. So we optimize also in the current status. For example, we have like a perception team, a prediction team, and everyone is optimizing their metrics. But normally we just want to optimize the end task, so the end task driving. So we have to backpropagate like the loss of driving also in the other modules.
Fortunately, in simulators, I hope.
All right, so I would like to stay in this topic for longer, but we're a little bit short on time. So I would like to shift the attention to a topic that Rodrigo brought up, but I think that Marzieh and Jakub, you can both, the three of you comment on it, which is centered on this idea that Rodrigo, you sent in an email before. It feels like web search, like Google, is kind of getting worse in the last few years, and I've seen this sentiment sort of reflected by other people, and kind of maybe agree with it. And I think it relates to this idea that a lot of the information space in the web is becoming noisy. And you related this because this in this next year, there's a lot of things going on in the intersection between NLP and information retrieval. What is exciting about you in this space between NLP and information retrieval? And do you think that can help sort of fix or make better, fix a bit of these problems that you mentioned about Google? Or
like giving a little bit of more context, it seems that every time that I search on Google, I would like to see some results from some trustworthy websites, but it's always like some random blogs that come up. I don't think Google is the only one to blame here. It's just the fact that everybody is now publishing more. There is always this problem of getting more information, how to curate them. But one thing that I'm quite excited, I think we would start to see in 2022, is that these models, as they become more available, like we can go to the OpenAI beta API, and you can use the GPT-3 175 billion. Its performance is quite good in many tasks. Sorry. And then you can use this model to try to correct the predictions of other models and vice versa. So I see as a possibly ongoing trend in 2021, or maybe in a short future, that these models will try to talk to each other and try to reach a consensus the same way that we do when we discuss with people. Maybe we could see models discussing with each other to check if the height of the Eiffel Tower is actually 350, or if some other model find another answer that might be even more convincing. To the point of your research, I think this is quite exciting, like creating this community of talking models that were trained on different parts of the web, each one with different perspectives, instead of just simply relying on whatever very big model from Google tells us. Yeah.
So what do you think? Do you think this can partly be solved? And this is also a question to Marzieh and Jakub Zavrel, about this trend of basically language models augmented with some sort of information retrieval module, or like a retriever model that you have a corpus of knowledge or documents that you can update and retrieve and use that in this language modeling. Like, do you see this as something that could become the new normal in the information retrieval space, kind of generally?
I think even in the NLP space in general. I think there's this really nice paper also from DeepMind in the late last year, December, about the retro model. So basically a language model augmented with 1 trillion token corpus retrieval. So they basically put all these 1 trillion tokens, which is like 1,000 times more than a billion token corpus, which was used previously, in a very fast nearest neighbor cache, and they use it to do classical language modeling. So basically, like predicting the probability of the next word in a string, and they just like beat the shit out of previous benchmarks. It's like the progress is insane there. So obviously, language modeling is a very special task, but I think this sort of large retrieve memory, associative fast approximate nearest neighbor memory, coupled with transformer-based language models, is the way forward. GPT-3 will not scale by training it on a trillion token corpus for much longer on a much larger machine. I think it's really
in my opinion, the biggest upside of this is that you can update knowledge in a corpus, right, without retraining the model. So theoretically, you could
theoretically, yeah.
GPT-3
how do you update a 1 trillion token corpus? I don't know.
No, but if it relies on some sort of open web search, right? If there's articles on COVID appearing, GPT-3 could theoretically sort of learn.
Yeah, you don't have to retrain the model. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this point that GPT-3 was trained prior to March 2020. So I don't know.
Actually, OpenAI itself published a paper, the Web GPT, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's pretty close to what they're doing.
Did you see that, Marzieh? The Web GPT. So basically, they like have GPT-3, and it's fine-tuned on using a web browser and a search engine to search for stuff on the web. And I think it's able to also beat regular GPT-3 on all kinds of benchmarks. So I really think that.
Quick question, you guys. Because you mentioned about the things that those models can help with, right? Like can help with curating the content and retrieving the content better. I remember from the security, as I many years ago I worked on security stuff with ML. We tried to do stuff there. The sort of takeaway from many discussions with the security people was that ML is actually better at creating, at creating attacks than at solving them. So it's I'm wondering if here ML is actually better at creating more noise in terms of like more creating fake stuff or creating just versions of the same article or et cetera, rather than at curating it. I'm wondering what's your take on it? Is it gonna help or is it gonna make things worse?
Our goal is to create the last edition of this webinar of 22 fully automatically. We'll just be training it on these examples.
Yeah. So you're planning on becoming a problem rather than a solution. That's good. I think that's good. That's a good approach.
But I remember. Sorry. I remember Ilya Sutskever was saying that from OpenAI saying that we train this model with everything now, but we should use some other model, the model itself, to select what we're gonna read. Currently, what do we like? Imagine that you're teaching our children to stuff about the world by reading the internet, and that's a pretty bad idea, as we know. So
that's pretty much what my children do.
Yeah, but maybe using another model or the model itself to curate what it's going to read. We don't want to spend a ton of time reading about conspiracy theories. It's good to know that what are each one of them, but you don't need to exactly know the details of. I think it's worth your time. You should be spending more time reading scientific articles, and I think we should do the same with these models. That's why they generate so many garbage at some time.
So a closely related topic to how this model works is the world of prompting. So I think prompting has been quite a trend in this past year, and this idea of, instead of learning parameters for models, learning some sort of prompt that, solves a task for a model without needing to retrain the model. I think that's a really interesting, direction. Talking before the webinar with Marzieh, I know you have some, opinions on whether this is the future, or to what degree this is the future. So do you want to reflect on this topic?
Yeah, so now for the past couple of years, we have these huge models that use huge amount of data, large number of parameters, and they are essentially a mystery box to us. So before, when you were training a model on the data, like in translation, for instance, we were training on news data from a particular year to a particular year. So even if you haven't looked in your data, you have some ideas what's in your data and what the model is predicting, why it's doing that. But now with these large models, they basically learn everything essentially. And these prompt-based approaches are a very nice trick, in my opinion, in basically probing these models and trying to get out of them what they have learned. And it's like a very interesting direction. However, I do think that I look at these prompt-based approaches as a rule-based 2.0 method. So it's very, very much reliant on the people that are creating these prompts. So what you have in mind that can get out of these models, and there's subjectivity there. There is like very limited amount of data, like prompts that you can actually create. So I think relying only on that and thinking that that's the main way that we can use these large models, that might not be the best idea.
So you would say use prompting as a way to kind of introspect into the model, but not so much as a way to solve novel tasks? Or will you agree to that?
Yes, more or less. Or even if you are solving these tasks, that's not the only way of doing that. So I think that's a very like shiny, attractive way of using these models in a very practical, these very large models in a very practical way to solve tasks. But I do think that you are adding your own bias and your own subjectivity in creating these prompts, and that's something that would limit what you will get in the end.
I mean, I definitely, regardless of what direction it takes, I feel like it's going to be a really interesting area to pay attention to. So I'm really looking forward to finding more papers.
I think there's there's probably already more than 20 startups whose business model is entirely based on prompting GPT-3. So you might be right, but
yeah.
the startup world is marching in the other direction.
I feel like this opens up the whole Pandora box of security stuff, like Czakon was mentioning before. I feel. Anyway, we're in the last 10 minutes of the webinar, and I don't want to leave without talking a little bit more about MLOps and startups, because in talking with Czakon before the webinar, you mentioned one of the things that you expect companies to like. One of the trends was this idea that you said companies will shift to building MLOps for reasonable use and scale. So I'm a bit intrigued by this statement. So can you reflect on it, like explain what you mean by that?
Yeah. So basically, on one end, what you see in the space is a lot of great papers, great publications from Ubers, Googles, et cetera, talking about various solutions to very high scale problems, right? And then on the other front, you have teams and the problems of organization, what to do with connecting this many data scientists to this many ML engineers and then users, and getting feedback, all the stuff, right? That's important and valid, right? But on the other front, you have teams of 3 people, data scientist, ML engineer, and a DevOps person putting models in production, right? And they read those papers and they say, well, but we also are not at the scale, and maybe one day we will be, but right now it's not very useful, and we can start implementing it and try to build it, but it's going to take us, a really long time, and it doesn't really, we're going to iterate, way slower than we probably should, just to get, because we want to do it sort of by the book, right? And, so what I think will happen is, and I actually see it already in teams talking about it, is, people will start understanding that, that there are different scales, and it's not one, problem. There are different problems in MLOps, and depending on the scale of the team, scale of the serving, scale of the data, the scale of the retraining, like there's millions of different, things that could be here. And instead of, trying to take, the Google book and adjust it to your, 3-person startup, it may be better to understand what exactly you want to solve, what exactly are the problems, and be pragmatic about solving them at your scale and, with your resources, and being very mindful of your scale, your resources, your people, and your time. So I think that's something that I expect to happen more in this year, like more people talking about it, about the solutions that they did, how they solved it at a smaller scale, how they solved it, the tools coming up that are more geared towards smaller teams or smaller smaller problems, just getting people quicker to what they need to do and focus on ML. So that's sort of.
Would you say there's been a for small teams like a tendency to like over engineer more than under engineer, like in that sense, or?
Yeah. So like the things, like I think the first sort of thing that that many teams do, especially if they are mostly sort of younger people, younger professionals, is like, oh, we can build it ourselves, right? So we can build it ourselves. Like you can build it, right? I mean, it's not like you can build it, right? The thing is, like when you start building, you see, oh, so there's a database sharding to deal with. There's scalability of this web UI. There is this and that. There is, connecting it to all different frameworks. There's different things that you don't want to care about. You don't want to do. You don't see them usually when you start building. But so like what we see, for example, is many teams they started like that, like home growing some solution, and then they figure, okay, no, we gotta move away from that and figure out what tools are out there that we can use to to not spend our time on it, to spend our time on actually working on those difficult, hard problems that are connected to the business, and then outsource other stuff. Right.
2022, the year of MLOps, the year of professional MLOps, but at a human scale.
Well, I think it's going to be pragmatic, like let's coin the term like pragmatic MLOps or something. Like
I feel like the team at Zeta Alpha can definitely relate to these struggles, right?
I'm wondering on the perspective from Christopher from the autonomous vehicle side, like what does MLOps mean in cars?
I guess because I'm more from academia, I can't relate to that much.
I think Elon Musk just downloads a new model from the IPython notebook that Andrej Karpathy wrote the day before. That's my feeling, but
we actually speak to a lot of autonomous, and actually some use Neptune, and I think in many cases it's actually there is a research part where MLOps is basically experiment tracking, and they just experiment a lot, and there's a lot of difficult research problems. And then there is another sort of problem of porting it to on-device stuff. And there is another team that is working on it. So then I don't think there is anything sort of like vertical for autonomous, like, you know, like it does all of those things. Like at least from what we see is, you know, there's a research team that does one thing. There is a, you know, there is a production sort of team that you know, that knows all the C and you know, and the intricacies of moving it on device. And yeah, so just my 2 cents here.
Unfortunately, we only have a couple of minutes left, so I wanted to give the floor to the other Jakub. Maybe you can, you know, like quickly gloss over the things that you're most looking forward for 2022 and give a few last words, you know, on stuff that we didn't touch maybe.
Well, one thing that I, you know, that we've seen in the last year, and which is really kind of fascinating, it is a race for ever larger models. So the prediction I wanted to make is, will we see 100 trillion parameter language or multimodal kind of model? And I was researching it online. There was a lot of discussion. So people are like, oh, so what is GPT-4 going to be? Is it going to be like, you know, like Voodoo and the switch transformer across, you know, like a trillion parameters? Well, then I found 2 things. So actually, some of the more potent recent language models have become smaller, like Gopher, and you know, more like in the 100 billion parameter range rather than going all the way, because it's very hard to train these models. But then I actually kind of, let me share my screen for a bit. I just typed 100 trillion parameters into our own search engine, and dude, there is already 100 trillion parameter model. Did you guys know that?
Well, I mean, I feel like, yeah, there's a lot of playing a game of redefining what
this is not playing a game. So this is an example of some of the stuff coming out of China, which you have no idea about. So this is a deep learning based recommender model. So it's not a transformer model, to be fair, right? So recommender models have a slightly different structure because like all the users and their embeddings, like most of the parameters are in a different place in the model. But this is actually 100 trillion parameter by Kwai Shu technology, the makers of Kwai, which is like the competitor of TikTok. So I know that my kids are spending like hours per day on TikTok and being super addicted. Persia, 100 trillion parameter model right here, end of November. So I think my prediction is in 2022, we will have 100 trillion parameter models.
I think that's a really, really good note to end the show at. Looking forward to, I don't know, to seeing how this translates into other, you know, domains of multimodal language models and this stuff, which I'm really excited to see. You also mentioned GPT-4. I'm gonna say also quick prediction. I'm gonna say some kind of model called GPT-4 is gonna be released in like first half of 2022. But you know, we'll see that. But yeah, I don't know, any quick remarks from the panelists before we close the session?
I just want to say that I think making predictions about the future, you know, it's the best if you have the data from the past to do it, like Jakub had it. So like, you know,
the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed, right?
Ooh, that's a good one. I like that. Yeah, it's a good one.
All right, cool. So thank you very much to everyone attending and to all the panelists. We'll be doing our next webinar on February 4th, I believe. Jakub, do you want to make any last remarks?
Well, thanks for joining us. The recording will be online, and Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.